I guess we're recording. So formal. Um,
I guess.
Hello everyone. This is
Hello,
episode one of the Silk
episode
Road.
one. Yes.
It feels like episode 10, man. Um,
Yeah, I had a few
and
technical issues,
many
so this
from
is episode 10
from
technically.
from all sides, to be honest. So anyway, yeah, welcome to our first episode. So today we're going to be talking about the geography of the Silk Road, which we'll be putting into like segments and stuff. So, the segments we're going to be having is basically the geography of Eurasia, the different sub-regions that you can classify inside of it, and then um, then we're going to actually talk about the Silk Road or Silk routes, as you could say. And then we're also then going to talk about the maritime Silk routes at the end. And it will be finito. So that is a that. Um, let's get it started before someone fucking cuts out or some shit.
No, it's not
Uh,
gonna happen this time. I sorted out the Wi-Fi
bruh,
issues.
I think it's the silk that you got around you that'll be cooking you. Just before, because
No, no, this is
before
sorry.
that, it was because before the silk you had, man, it was okay. It's like a curse.
No, this is what? No, this actually gave me better fortune, if anything.
No, it's cursed, bro.
Really?
Because you know
Yeah,
why?
I
Really?
say so.
It's because it's
You know why?
made.
Because I got this from the Silk Road.
No, because you got it from Italy, bro. The
No, I
Mediterranean.
got
It's,
this when I was back
bro.
in Dunhuang. You'll see some pictures. You'll see the pictures.
He means Venice, bro.
This is real silk. This is a silk from the Silk Road, guys.
Show it to the camera.
Oh, it is.
Whoa. See,
Oh,
that's not a very Chinese chandelier. I'm not gonna lie.
yeah, I was
No,
gonna
but
say
I'm
that's
because
very
joking.
this has
that,
like a lot of
that's very like
influence.
90s,
That's a
like the
very,
80s reference.
yeah, it's a
No, no, no. If
very,
you have a proper look at the artwork, it's more like
Fake.
sixth
like,
century, that type of stuff. Like
it's like a,
almost like it looks like a palace, like a Mongol palace. Does that exist? I might be wrong.
like fusion
Like
food.
like the Taj Mahal.
Yeah, a little bit, a little bit.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
So
fusion
it's
food.
got like
I,
cultural
sorry, sorry.
influence written, drawn all over this. So
Like our
Yeah,
respect
podcast.
this,
yeah.
only the nobles wear silk back in the days. So I'm technically much higher than you guys at the moment just because of this.
You aren't even wearing it, bro. You stole that, and then you just put it on. It's not even engraved into the clothing, bro.
It is,
It's not
no,
even real.
it
It's
doesn't matter.
exactly.
It's about owning a piece of silk while no one else can.
Man,
That's why it's so high class.
you sound a lot like one of them people who stole the silkworms, bro. I'm not
You
gonna
sound
lie.
like you sound like you hate poor
And
people.
it, there's a lot of
I mean, when you got
classism
silk
here.
on, when you buy
Yeah.
silk, everything changes.
He
Just your
called us
whole lifestyle just
povos.
upgraded.
For real. Anyway,
I
let's
mean,
actually
yeah.
Povos.
Anyway,
let's
full
actually get
silk.
to it
Let's go.
before we get too far deep into classism. Um, yeah, cool. So we'll just kind of lay out some of the regions that in Eurasia. Um, so firstly, what is Eurasia? I think most people know that, to be honest. So I don't think there's anything that we need to say about that. However, it is Europe and Asia together. I mean, Africa's kind of connected to Europe and Asia, but they don't classify that. I mean, I don't know. I don't know about that.
No, I think it's separate.
Yeah, it is separate, but why? But it's connected. It's connected through the Arabian Peninsula. but they don't want to be they don't want to put us as a part of it. I don't know. It sounds a bit dubious to me, if I have to say so
Mm,
myself. But yeah, Eurasia is Europe and Asia, and this also includes some of the islands that are around Eurasia as well. So this includes Cyprus, for example. It's quite good holiday destination. Bali, Indonesia. It's
For the
also quite good.
Brits.
yeah.
Our good friend Butch went to Bali, I think. He quite liked it there.
He,
Uh,
yeah, he
Jap
almost died. It's them bandits from the Silk Road that got
yeah,
him.
he nearly got cooked. I'm not gonna lie,
Yeah. He got caught
cooked.
lacking, and
Yeah, he didn't get the bubonic plague, but he got the dengue fever, bro.
He
It was
got, he
it
got the
was it was near
second
to
most deadliest thing
li-
out there.
near to God bubonic plague, bro. He fucking unleashed some fucking second century disease out there. I'm not gonna lie.
It's like dodging a fucking bullet, but then you just get stabbed anyway. Like you just got messed up.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, Butch. That's neither here nor there. Um, yes. So it encapsulates all of these places. So one of the first places that we're going to talk about first is we're going to be talking about um, China, the originators of silk. Say what? What? China?
Mm.
what, but did it though?
Or maybe it didn't. Who knows? But China is
Oh.
at the time when it first started is from what most historians would say, just due to the fact that most people would say that most of the silk came from China as a monopoly. And before around 200 BCE, there weren't too many silk roads, but they were having troubles with some rebels called Xiongnu. I think I said that properly, but they were
Yeah.
nomads and they were pretty bananas. So they sent out some envoys to Yuji to see if they were going to be like, "Yo, China, can I help you?" And at the time, the envoy, when they went down there, they saw some fucking big muscular horses. Some
Heavenly horses.
yeah, like some
Heavenly horses.
bear Arnold Schwarzenegger, man. They
Yeah.
were
They
like
were they
huge.
were called yeah, they were called Tiamat,
Was
which is literally heavenly horses. They were like
Yeah,
blood sweating horses. That was
man, I'd love to see one of those, man.
important to them.
They're probably
I
why
want to see
did
how buff those horses are.
they're probably
yeah, I was gonna say
huge in more ways than one.
like what were like the native horses in like China? What was like the native horses in China? Like what would they like for them to be like, I want to go trade with them and have their
I guess
horses?
China would
Like were the
just only
horses
had
like that
donkeys, man.
crap?
Like
The
if they
it
think the horses, if they don't have good horses, they must have donkeys. So you need to like at
yeah,
least
well,
reach out.
they had the Sigma male
Yeah.
horses,
At the
bro.
time, I think they were just losing that war, and they needed,
Yeah,
and they saw those really good
mm.
horses, and they were willing to trade silks for it.
And especially in Central Asia,
Oh,
the breeding of horses around that time was bigger than it was in Han Dynasty China. And because of that, they
Yeah.
opened up to the Silk
okay.
Roads. But in
Huh?
China, as a geographical location overall, it can kind of usually be split into two sort of regions, North and South China, right? This is between the Han
Hmm.
and Huai rivers that kind of split it, and especially in times of disunion or political unrest, the um, the splitting point is usually north and south, just due to the geographical settings, and that's where it usually kind of splits, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, in terms of North China, this is more landlocked area, so they usually have like more caravans. They travel on wheels and stuff like that, and it's dry. There's some valleys and there's more mountains, and more or less the stuff that they kind of make around there is like wheat, right? Whereas in South China, they're closer to the coast, so they're able to have canals and boats and stuff, and it's more of a monsoonal climate, which means it rains
Hmm.
a fair amount. It's like the UK basically, probably worse. I don't know. Never
At the
been.
moment,
Probably.
all the time.
Yeah, and yeah, because of that, there's more fertilization in terms of the soil, and it's better for rice. So those are the two different areas of China that I would say that you could kind of put in. And on the north side of China as well, it's good to remember that there is also the Great Wall of China, just due to the fact that there are so many nomadic raiders in this area, which we'll talk about later as the Trans-Eurasian Steppes, right? And this is a big ass banana place. It's like, anyway, we'll talk about it later, but yes, they were some crazy people. They had their curved bows and they were going nuts at China. They were like, ah, no! Chinese people were getting scared. And until they got the horses
Hmm.
and then they got cooked. Either way, that's the geography of China. And now let's move to um, South Asia. So South Asia is more or less where around India is, Pakistan, Bangladesh, around that area. So as is kind of said in like GCSE geography, I think that there's the Indian tectonic plate, and this smashed into Eurasia, straight into the bottom of Eurasia, bruv. Should have hurt probably, and it made these bunch of like the Tibetan mountains, and the Plateau of Tibet and the Himalayas, which is very, 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 very hard to traverse. Have you seen Mount Everest? Many people have died there, so I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like it's a bit scary.
Not me.
Yeah, he's different. But yeah, it because of this, it made this massive geographical divide between China and India, and it was really hard to kind of get through the Himalayas. So usually there are some caravans that kind of go through this area. It's usually at the lower escarpments or valleys of the Himalayas that trying to get through to pass Tibetan salt to the people. Obviously, this is really, really hard to do. So it's very limited in that sort of sense. But South Asia, um, obviously, was also a massive player in the maritime Silk routes as well, just due to the fact it was just had such a control over the Arabian and Sea and the Bay of Bengal and the Indian Ocean as well. And this massive landmass just kind of had such a big effect and influence, which we might talk about today or maybe the next couple episodes about its influence around Southeast Asia and its culture and so on and so forth. But we'll leave it for a bit later. But
Yeah.
it's definitely such um, a pivotal area, and it's so guarded by valleys and mountains and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's one other area. And then another area that we can talk about is that I guess it's not really talked about much in terms of the Silk Road. Silk Road is Northeast Asia. So this is kind of like the northeastern of China, Shandong, Liaodong peninsulas, Manchuria, Korea, Japan, and I guess for most of the ancient era, this place was kind of isolated, especially Japan. I remember especially there was this period of time where it became
Hmm.
isolationist, and they were like, "No, thank you, none of these
Who did
foreigners."
Japan?
Yeah, for a good amount
Oh,
of time,
It was like
very
it was
isolationist.
like during the time when they were like trading with the West, right? Like they allowed some trade,
Yeah,
but
and some
then
stuff they got cooked.
something to do with like yeah, something to do with like show like a certain type of like dynasty or shogun took over and they were like, fuck the West. Like
There,
we don't need any of this.
there's a Netflix CGI series called The Blue Eye Samurai about it. It's pretty good actually. Um,
Oh, okay.
but yeah, but over
Mm.
time, they kind of started, the Chinese influence kind of grew and grew and grew just due to the fact of the growing strength of China. And that growing influence
Mm.
meant that the trade routes and um, the routes of trade and more trade happened basically to around this area. So yeah, it's somewhat it has its own East Asian coastal culture, but at the same time, you know, it still had a place in the Silk Road. And it's also said that some of the Persian goods did end up all the way down to Korea and Japan, which is
Oh
bananas.
well.
Really?
Yeah,
So the Silk Road
very.
went really far west
They was
of the
going.
east as well. East of the east.
Yeah, man, the beast of the east. They were cooking. They were doing the nay nay on there, bro.
Silento.
All the way down the Silk Road. All the way down the Silk
Watch.
Road.
Oh, oh my God! Is he grittying? Is he grittying? No way. he he grittied down the maritime Silk Road? No, he's
Oh my
different.
goodness, he just gritty. He just gritty from Persia to Korea. He's wild.
Yo, gritty Silk Road challenge gone wrong. Anyway,
Silk Road challenge.
the next couple parts is the Southeast Asia mainland and also Southeast Asia islands. So in terms of Southeast Asia mainland, um, this area was kind of really, really good in terms of crops. It was fertile, it was forestry, a lot of tropical areas, and it was also just like such a coastal area. Um, there was some routes that kind of went down here, especially due to the trade between China. And one of the most influential areas to the Maritime Silk Road, which we'll, I guess, talk about a bit later, is the Strait of Malacca, which was a political chokehold. Um, but in terms of the Southeast Asian islands, there's a massive historical point here in terms of trade that there was massive trade here way, way, way before the Maritime Silk routes, which we'll also talk about later. But yeah, it's really crazy. There's also Northern Europe, so this is kind of as you would think, Scandinavia, Vikings, Vinland Saga, for some not
Mm.
yeah, like the God of War. I don't know. I'm not really sure to be honest, but um, I know you can see the aurora lights. I don't know how you call it. Aurora Bora. How do you say it? What was it called?
Bora, Bora.
Borealis.
Yeah, that's
Is
it.
it
That's it.
Borealis?
Aurora.
Yeah,
I
the
thought it was Aurora Boreal. Aurora Boreal. Aurora Borneo.
Nah, just say the Northern Light, man.
Yeah.
Borneo.
Just that's easier.
So the Northern Lights are there, and obviously around the ancient era and medieval, and moving up to the medieval era, there's a lot of Vikings, a lot of piracy, and it was just in terms of what you think about Vikings, people would think of it as a backwards culture. But even then, due to Roman trade routes and trade routes being dispersed from the Mediterranean, and there were still things, even um, maybe around maybe the 10th to 13th century, trade routes would all go up to Scandinavia and Northern Europe. And you wouldn't even think about that. So I think that's a good talking point. What Vikings and the Han Dynasty? What crazy pairing. That's like, I don't know, the nerd girl and jock boyfriend. I don't know, type
That's
of
like
It's a weird
that,
crossover.
yeah.
yeah, it's like LeBron James pairing up with Messi. to like win a tennis match or something.
Oh God, oh God, bro.
That's pretty much
Yeah,
it,
bro.
yeah.
Yeah, man. You would never have thought about it, man. I would have never thought
Yeah.
about LeBron and Messi, bro. Now that's a goat.
Yeah, and yet,
But that's just the
and yet it
Silk Road.
happened.
And
That's
yet
And
it
yet it
happened, yeah.
happened.
the Silk Road effect. The Silk Road effect.
And yeah, boom. They literally were connected even through this area. The next part we're going to talk about is, I guess, a more important part is the Mediterranean. So around most of the time of this Silk Route era, the Roman Empire was growing and growing and had a lot of control over the Mediterranean. So what are we talking about the Mediterranean? The Mediterranean is basically where the Roman Empire was. So this is a lot of North Africa, a lot of basically the coastal parts of the Mediterranean, Italy as we know it now, Spain, Cyprus, Turkey, you know, just and to the even to like the western edges of um, the Middle East. And it's good to think about this as one unified area because basically this was a large point of where all the goods were dispersed. So from the Mediterranean Sea all the way out to the Atlantic Ocean, and as we'll talk about a bit about later, was a large part in obviously in the age of exploration as well. But yeah, this
Yeah.
dispersed everything, right? Um, so it's good to think about it, and it's basically the western termination point that most people
So it's
think of for the
like
Silk
a
Routes.
trading hub
Yeah,
between Europe and Asia,
yeah,
essentially.
basically, man.
Hmm.
It's like the Steam workplace. It's where you have you start trading stuff, man. It's crazy. I need to trade some of my like Steam cards. Man, I forgot about that. But yeah, like it's that was definitely what people would see as the termination point, but it's not the termination point of the actual Silk Road, but more of a dispersion point to the rest of Europe, basically. But
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
yeah, but to get to the Mediterranean, nearly every single overland area would have to go through the Middle East. So the Middle East around this, I would probably classify this from basically um, west, eastern Mediterranean, right, to about western Persia, which we call modern Iran today, which is basically the Iranian plateau, right? And this
Mm.
encompasses all of the
Hmm.
Arabian Peninsula. So around this area, right, this area is super dry, super arid, and basically a lot of this was it thrived a lot on oasis cities. So these oasis cities
Hmm.
was what made the not the Mediterranean, sorry, but the Middle East thrive. So this was really important, and all the Silk Roads basically went through all the way through here. Um, a good thing to think about actually. So I think was it the Persian kingdom? I'm not sure, but Darius the First actually laid out trade infrastructure, calling it the Royal Roads, all the way through the Middle
Yeah.
East. This was before the Silk Roads as well.
Yeah,
So
I think
he,
some say like this that could be like the starting point
hmm,
of where they would say it's a Silk Road. And
yeah,
then over time, they just start connecting from Asia,
yeah, it
and that's what
is.
they formed the Silk Road.
Yeah, they put the Chinese on, bruv. Like, I mean,
Yeah, they
to
got the
say
Chinese on this. I was like, oh,
they should have gate capped that shit. God, this is our shit. But yeah, this is what I'd more or less a very pivotal part, and a lot of overland areas went to it. And it's also to say a lot of the Arabian kingdoms
Hmm.
came off the coastal cities of the Arabian Peninsula and used a lot of the maritime silk routes through there. So that's very important. So now we're closing in to where about the main Silk Road is. But before that, we'll be talking about the Trans-Eurasian steppes. What does the steppes mean? I think in Russian, the Russian word of steppe, I think steppe's a Russian word. Okay, I'm dilly-dallying. Is grassy plains, right? It's it's grassy plains. There's near to no trees, a bunch of flat land, kind of arid, grassy, and it's all flat, and it's basically, yeah, just this massive, massive stretch of land. This basically stretched between eastern Mongolia, so that's basically, if you think about Mongolia is between Siberia and China, so the eastern part of that, all the way to about Romania and Hungary, which is nuts. Yo, like that's I don't
That's
know.
a huge as flat land.
That is pretty big. That's like
That's quite big.
plains biome from Minecraft, man. That's like
That's,
huge.
yeah, plains biome.
Yeah. I'd be a bit scared to go there, to be honest. It's a bit too flat for me.
Yeah, imagine like you just seen an endless piece of land. You
Yeah.
don't know where it leads to. There's no road. It's just
No
grass.
road, no nothing, no bitches. What?
Yeah.
Uh
Was that
um
so that's in between Mongolia and China essentially.
yeah, so it's between Mongolia and China and this massive stretch of land. So it's around here. Oh, you'll be seeing it on the podcast, but it's just here. Just these Mongolian Eurasian steppes that you can see that kind of border Siberia or as part of Siberia all the way to the Balkans. So that's a really important thing to think about. Um, So this part, there was a lot of nomads. As we talked before, these nomads were kind of cooking China for a little bit before China was like, "Hey, look, we got the big boys."
Now we got good
Then
horses.
then
We
they
can't mess
cooked
with us
them.
anymore.
Meat, you know, they it's revenge against the cooks. They were both cooking at a certain period in time, man. Um, yeah, but this part, just due to the fact of it being so widespread and so plain that even before the Silk Roads, it was a massive, massive highway for the transmission of language, culture, goods, and so on and so forth. Because
Mm.
after chariots and horses and horseback riding was invented, it was a really, really easy way to get from A to B, east to west, which was really good. And a lot of this was the nomads and the hunter gatherers, but eventually they became um, more domesticated and they started domesticating cattle, horse, sheep, and goats. But I think a good misconception I think that most people think about is that when they think of nomads, they think of them just literally just running around and just fucking doing shit. But in fact,
Mm.
they would basically have like two two or more different camps that they would travel to and fro from. And in terms of
Mm.
like that they would go in the winter time, and then when it would be in the springtime or when they knew that the crops
Oh,
in a certain area would be good enough, they would come back to that area and start taking crops.
so do they
Which
Yeah.
do they not care about security? Like, what if someone found this and just killed?
um, I mean, I guess, but
They
like it's huge, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I read some of this actually. It was like just a little bit. Like there's this like you know how big the Mongol Empire was, and like Genghis Khan had like loads of like concubines and whatnot.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's like something similar to what the nomads are doing, but basically there would be a queen or a queen of sorts looking after this nomadic tribe. But then when it was time to move, she would actually organize it all. So she would give the command, she would organize like everything to be like packaged away into horses, put the tents up, or like if it's massive, put the tents in like this massive wagon, and then start wheeling it to their like other destination. And then from there, then they just set up camp. So it was like it's like a crazy ass like industry almost. Like they were running that shit. Like they were running a tight ship, and like everyone had
So
their own job. And
so it
yeah,
was a female who organized the whole
well,
thing.
and that was that was just like one example. I think that was
Yeah.
during like the Mongol area. I don't know specifically what time, but like that's like an idea on how like that would happen and like how they would
Oh,
organize. Like so like, there was actual bosses. There were actually people that had certain jobs to do. They had to herd and like they had to herd all the animals into an area, and then it was like a massive operation, which was like pretty insane because imagine
so it's,
doing that shit like no emails or like no Bluetooth or something.
yeah, it sounds like a quite a well-constructed community.
Yeah, man. There's
Hmm.
0% unemployment rate in that type of organization.
Yeah,
So
you
you
can't
gotta
get
Yeah,
respect
lazy
that.
over there.
Yeah, you gotta
yeah, and
respect
if
it.
you're lazy, yeah, if you're lazy, you just die because you ain't doing anything.
Yeah,
you,
you just get
you had stuff to do.
you're either employed or you just get cooked. There's no benefits around here,
Exactly.
bro.
It's like oh, you don't pull your weight, your house isn't packed up, and now you're dead during winter. It's like you kind of
Yeah,
have to do it.
it's a real do or die situation.
Real,
Yeah.
bro. Um, yeah, which leads us to our final area, which will also lead us to the main roads of the Silk Route. So, if I hadn't said this before, the Silk Routes are actually not a Silk Road. That's why I've been saying the Silk Route, because
Oh.
Okay.
the
Yeah.
the other one is kind of fraudulent. It's not a road, mate.
Scandalous.
It's not the M4, mate.
Mm, a,
No.
a misconception.
It's not the motorway, fella.
False propaganda. Oh.
Conspiracy theories.
Yeah. It's because of Ferdinand von Richthofen, I think is his name. Is that his name? Or
Yeah, no, Frederick,
Man
isn't it?
Frederick Manfred
I think it's Frederick. Yeah.
Fre Frederick von Richthofen, and he coined the term Silk Road, which kind of
Oh
stuck.
no, it's Manfred. It's
Manfred,
Manfred von.
yeah, Manfred von
Yeah.
Richthofen, which I thought so. Um, and yeah, it kind of stuck, but they're trying to change it more into the more the correct term, I guess, the Silk Routes, because
Yeah, it's
that's
more appropriate, I
a
guess,
per yeah
because it's
more
multiple
yeah
routes.
yeah. There's
Yeah.
multiple routes to it, so um yeah. It's just more appropriate, really. It's not very. It's just a bit inappropriate to call it a road.
Yeah, don't know what Manfred was thinking,
Yeah, come on now. Come
Yeah.
on now. But
but
this
it's all
last
right.
area, this last area is the Intermontane Desert and Belt. So this part was basically the northwestern part of China, all the way to the Caspian and Black Seas. So as you can see on this map that nobody else sees, um, it goes
Oh
So you
yeah, I
all the
see it.
way
can.
Okay.
over the plateau of Tibet, all the way down to the Caspian Black Seas over here.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. I
So
see.
this so this part, basically the same as the Middle East, was arid, dry, and had a lot of deserts, and basically sustained itself all due to the fact of oasis cities, same as the Middle East. Um, and without these oasis cities, I think it would be really, really hard to traverse this area. So this is basically a lot of this is where the main Silk Roads are, which I have said before, I guess. But basically, let's follow it here. It starts off at Xi'an, or
Mm.
now it's called Chang'an. Am I saying that right, Dan?
Yeah, Chang'an.
Yeah. And it basically goes through all the way up here through this Gansu or Hexi corridor, which was a choke point in many periods of time. Um,
Gansu. Yeah.
yeah.
Is that where the Jade Gate?
Yes. And
Led to
this
believe.
yeah. This would go to the Jade Gate. So the Chinese people coveted jade very, very, very much and held it with high reverence. So they used to bury their people covered in jade so they would keep the spirit inside of them at the time. So it's
Oh, okay.
something to
Interesting.
think about.
Mm.
Did
But
not
yeah,
know that.
but yeah, the big thing about the Gansu corridor is that in times of political unrest, this would be a especially hard area to get through. Especially just due to the fact that most of these Silk Roads don't really have any upkeep from the government, and in times of
Mm.
political unrest and where there's disunion, this Gansu corridor can definitely become a political chokehold. Um, so it would the Silk Road would always be thriving the most when the entirety of the Gansu corridor of and from Xi'an all the way to basically Merv, all of this area would be this territory would be taken in by a single civilization. That's when it would be thriving the most, as there would be no political choke point, and there would be upkeep in this
Mm.
area. An example of that would be the Mongols, of course. They had a massive area of Eurasia. So after you go through that, you would go basically to Dunhuang, and you go either up or down this area here. And this is around the Taklamakan Mountains. So this area was a desert, and it would also be very, very, very cold in certain times, right? So you could
Oh,
take
okay.
the northern routes, so Turfan, Kuka, I don't know how to say that, and it goes out Kushgar, or you can go down to Dunhuang or Khotan, or
Yeah.
you could try and risk your life and go through the Taklamakan Mountains, but that is extremely, extremely hard, and very limited people have done it and made it out alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I actually read this account by a Chinese monk who traveled through the desert, and in his diary or book he wrote, he was literally saying he was about to die. Like he didn't think he was gonna make it out. Imagine, like you work for hours and you find no water for days. You're dying in the sun, so
yeah, I
not a good
can't.
place. Not a good place to go.
Yeah, I could never do that personally.
But
I
it is
keep
a shorter route compared to taking it around
for,
the desert, though.
yeah, for sure. It's obviously the straight
Yeah,
line route would be the quicker route, but the heavier, deathier route.
yeah,
So as you can see here, it goes into Central Asia, and Central Asia, which we'll leave it for another time, had a lot of influence as well on the Silk
yeah,
Roads. But it would go through Merv and go all the way through Baghdad, right? And this is a massive, massive trade route and trade point in the Middle East. It would go all the way to Damascus, Tyre, and then all the way until it gets to Constantinople, where all the goods would then get dispersed, right?
yeah,
So I would say, in terms of the Silk Road, or the overland Silk Road, This is the most well-known one. But there are two other main routes that I guess are less spoken about. So there's one that when you get to Kashgar or around this area around here, it would go around the plateau of Tibet and under the Himalayas and would then start basically touching the Himalayas and touching the northern parts of India. And this would be a road that would go through Delhi and go all the way into India. And that would be the trade route to basically get into India and be trading into India. And to this day, actually, there is this highway around here called the Karakoram Highway. So it's still actually used to this day
Oh,
to
okay.
get to places.
I
So
thought
yeah,
I
carry
thought
on.
by now they would just use a boat if they want to trade.
Yeah, but well, this part is like mostly inland, so
Oh,
um,
okay.
it's a massive highway from basically Afghanistan all the way down to through Pakistan and then down to India from like China area. And then
Oh
there's the
wow.
southwestern route that kind of goes from Chengdu, um, and then it will go through like Myanmar, and then it would then clip and then go down and kind of link to this southern route and go down to the Indian subcontinent. As you can see here, the Indian subcontinent is really, really important for the maritime silk routes, which we'll be talking about now. So as we said before, in terms of the silk routes, a lot of the silk routes were around the Southeast Asia part. And this was because there was talented seafarers. So as you may or may not know, a lot of the Pacific Islanders and people in Southeast Asia, and especially in the islands that they inhabit now, they basically literally just um, took a map, like a random boat, and just started going out. Right. And so they had this massive control of like the seas from even maybe like 3000 BC, right? And so trade around this area was happening way before the Silk Route and the Maritime Silk Routes.
Oh,
So uh,
Oh,
the Maritime Silk Routes in actuality basically started the same time as the overland Silk Routes, which is 200 BCE.
so this this like precursor to the maritime silk routes, is that like equivalent to that road? I forgot.
The
Who's that?
Royal Road in the
Yeah,
Middle East.
is it like that? Is it like the equivalent of that, but just more in a maritime setting, would you say?
Um,
I mean,
I
would
would
that be
say
before
yeah.
the
So
Royal
the
Road?
the Royal Road is a lot more recent and then happened maybe
Oh.
I don't quote me on this, but I think from my memory maybe 500 BC. Though I don't know if that's true or not, so don't quote me on that. However, and then Alexander the Great then conquered most of the kingdom and took most of the Royal Road as well. But the Maritime Silk Roads and the Austronesian Silk routes, Silk trade routes, this is was much more extensive and obviously took way more um, area than the Royal Road. The Royal Road was basically just most of the like from Mediterranean all the way to the ends of the Middle East. Whereas the
Oh,
Australian
right.
or the Austronesian Silk routes was a lot of the Pacific Islands or the Philippines and Southeast Islands, and it would stretch and connect to like the Chinese and Southeast mainland areas, right?
Oh,
And
oh.
a lot of this infrastructure was then obviously inbuilt to cater to the maritime silk routes along the way. So
Mm.
additionally to this, the Arabs and the Arabian Sea was a massive area as well. So as you may or may not have known, um, as you said, like a lot of the Persian goods went all the way up to the Northeast Asia to Korea and Japan, um, which is really weird to think about. But also
Yeah.
the theirs was a massive influence of Arabian culture around the 13th century, especially when the Islamic kingdoms started arising.
Yeah.
Therefore, that's
Yeah.
why there's a lot of influence around Indonesia and Malaysia in terms of
Okay.
Islam.
Um,
And
So
also, yeah, carry on.
yeah, because when we talk about the Silk Routes and we say, oh yeah, most of the importance and influence have been from like Rome and China, but then
Mm.
like after hearing you talk, it just seems like actually Persia and like the Persian Empire, the Arabian Peninsula, they have more of an effect than what like you know kind of common like perception gives it to the Silk Roads. Would you like agree with like was there like when we talk about the importance of like the big traders and like the big places like Rome and China, do you think that Persia and the Persian Empire they deserve to be like common knowledge of like when we talk about like yeah they were huge for the Silk Roads?
So the Roman Empire was different than the Persian and the Islamic kingdom. So the Islamic like caliphates would always be perpetually growing and then disbanding and growing and disbanding through history,
Oh,
whilst the Roman Empire
oh
basically was intact for quite a large amount of time. But at the same time, the
yeah.
the Roman Empire, right, because of its as you can see in the map, um, its control
Yeah, I
was
see.
on the Mediterranean Sea, right? This was basically shooting outwards to the Atlantic Ocean, which was the western side of the Eurasian continent. So they would
Yeah.
have a much greater influence around Europe rather than its influence around Southeast Asia, just due to the fact that it was less visible to them and it was harder for them to go through that way. Whereas say the Arabian Peninsula that connected straight to the Arabian Sea, which would connect basically straight to the Southeast Asian maritime Silk routes. So that I would say is just easier for them to get around, basically.
I think where they're located geographically essentially is between Constantin however you're pronouncing it,
Constantinople,
Constantinople.
yeah.
Yeah, Constantinople and Asia.
Mm.
If they're like between that, doesn't that mean that a lot of the goods just go through them anyway? I mean, they were probably an important trader on the Silk Road as well. So I
The
assume any trade that goes through it, they
yeah.
actually levy some tax, like they impose tax that goes through. So I guess in that way they have quite the influence on the
Uh,
Silk Road.
could,
Okay.
could,
Yeah, I
could
agree
you
with that.
could you say that again? So who levied the tax?
The Persians, like
Oh
just
yeah,
because where they're geographically located, they have to go
yeah.
through. Most of the trades will most likely go through there, if not through the maritime trade, the
So
maritime route.
so I guess spoiler alert: the Silk Roads, especially overland, was closed. But
Oh,
um,
didn't get to that chapter yet.
Damn, it's not even a road. It's just
the Silk Routes,
it's just
but
maritime. It's just Silk
a
Road
large
Sea, I guess.
a large part of the decline of the Silk Roads and the maritime Silk routes was that the Ottoman Empire, which controlled a lot of the Middle East, in
Oh,
this I don't know which era, but yeah, the Ottoman Empire put insane taxes on trade, and basically
Oh,
halted trade for a large period of time, which caused the decline of the maritime Silk routes.
Yeah.
So basically what you're saying
And
is correct.
the rise of the Ottoman Empire. As soon as they captured Constantinople
Why are you saying like
in
that?
what, like 15th century,
Yeah,
16th century.
yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce. It's a
Why
hard
you
word
say
to pronounce.
why are you saying it like constant nipple, bro?
Constant, Constantinople.
It's
It's
Constantinople.
hard. How do
It's
you
not
say
that
it?
hard to say.
Constantinople. Okay, okay.
Constant nipple, bro. Shit. No acceleration on that
I guess.
nipple.
Congrats.
Shit, stayed constant.
Constantinople. No, damn, Constantinople.
It's Noble.
No, Paul.
Constantinople.
No, Noble. Constantinople.
There
Never
we
mind.
go. Alright, well, what were you
All right,
saying?
Constantinople. But when they captured it in, I think the 16th, 15th century. I don't know. I forgot. I will check that.
Okay.
Um, I read about it though. So,
Sources.
Just
but
trust
basically,
me, I
as soon as
read
they
it.
captured it, trust me, bro.
Just trust me, I read that shit.
I'm not good with days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so when they captured the place, they basically, as we said before, it was such a huge trading hub. They essentially slowed down the trade between Europe and Asia.
Yeah.
And that's why some argue that the Romans and Europeans started looking elsewhere through the sea.
Mm.
And that's
Right.
what prompted the Age of Discovery and
Right.
followed by European colonization and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's actually a little bit of a misconception as well, because
Oh.
it's like almost saying that the Ottoman Empire was the reason why the Europeans and the Romans started going around exploring and eventually led to like a lot of colonization around the world and the discovery of America as well.
Mm.
But we'll discuss that in another episode because that's a lot into that kind of misconception.
It's a bit of a sticky situation. But
Mm.
It's sticky because some facts may be overlooked in the past.
for real. Something to note as well that also because the Indian subcontinent, so the Indian South Asian area, had a big play into also the maritime Silk routes. There was a massive influence of like Indian culture on Southeast Asia as well, just due to the maritime trade routes in that area. Um, and there's a lot of Indianization because of that as well. Um,
Sour.
but yeah, and so I guess a part of what the Ottoman Empire and all that, um, basically in times of political conflict, say there are times where, I say in the Song Dynasty, um, they did not have control over the Gansu corridor, and because of that, it made it perpetually and so much harder for them to basically start trading overland. And because of that, they started going through the maritime Silk routes. And yeah, and we
Yeah,
discussed this at a previous time, but you said like in terms of previous conflict as well, and in general, the maritime Silk routes were used so much more, and especially as technology increased as well, it just was used more and more and more. Um,
yeah. As like nautical technology gets better, and also more mariners or like traders gain experience on the sea. Like over time they have enough experience to basically go from India all the way. Like they can basically travel all the way through the Indian Ocean without stopping. And cutting the travel time by like days. So that's
yeah,
why
literally.
the maritime trade just made more sense economically.
Yeah. And in terms of like overland trade routes, like the biggest part of that was to get through Central Asia. Central Asia had many different things, especially in the ancient era. Um, it had many different things that were not yet found in different areas, such as the recurve bow, cavalry, horses. So, especially yeah, when Silk Route was just opening up, um, these were things that were um, highly coveted, and therefore they kind of needed to go through Central Asia, and also because
Yeah.
of that, made it into a massive trade route. But yeah, that's the geography of um, that's the geography of the Silk Road.
Yeah.
Um,
But I think the main thing
Amazing.
to take away here is like the it's not just one straight road from A to B, from Asia to Europe. It's multiple routes coupled with maritime trade routes made this
right,
entire thing happen.
right,
And that is why the whole thing called trade routes.
yeah, and
Mm.
and to that extent, even at such an early age of civilization, um, literally almost all civilizations were basically connected all at once just due to this, and the transfer of so many things were happening. It's crazy to think that even now, at our day and age, like we are so connected now. But when I think of like say the ancient era or whatever, these periods of time of the Roman Empire, the Han Dynasty, or you know Japan in like their like shogunate era, and when they had emperors, Viking, so on and so forth, you see these periods of time and you think that they're isolated pieces of history. However, they're all interconnected, and the Silk Road kind of symbolizes that in its own sort
Yeah.
of way, um, which is really
Everybody
cool
was
to think.
expanding and colonizing and meeting new people.
Yeah,
So
and I feel like this Silk Road was made there's such a massive butterfly effect in terms of advancing technology, civilization, everything in general.
yeah,
So it was an imperative piece of history. But
I could argue
Yeah.
like without the Silk Road, would be still throwing stones at people,
yeah,
probably.
literally.
I mean,
Yeah.
like
Um,
the gunpowder was spread through the Silk Road as well, so
mm,
that's one thing. As in
mm,
like
Yeah.
weapons and stuff.
It's yeah, it's crazy to think because like obviously now, well, throughout the common years, like we see China as like, oh, it's a growing super country, like, oh, it's got like so much like industry and trade, but the Silk Road just kind of shows it's kind of always been like that actually.
Yeah, they've been
Like
doing this for
like
years,
they've been
centuries.
doing this. It kind of shows how like our view on like China, especially like during the modern age, is very like westernized because like it was always
Mm,
like Western media saying, "Oh, they're a growing thing. Oh, they're gonna become the next like big thing." But like if we look at history, like what we're literally doing now, it's like shit. Like China had the shit on lock. Like they were
real.
crazy.
yeah,
Like they were growing. They were that thing. Like everyone wanted to be them. Everyone wanted to have their silk and their like
yeah.
goods. And it was like it's like
I
damn, like
yeah.
nothing really changed.
I to a certain extent, not to be political.
Oh, oh,
No,
oh,
but to a certain
oh.
extent, I think I think
What's he gonna follow up with?
what am I gonna say? You won't see me
Oh,
for episode
we
two,
might have to end
guys.
it early.
Oh damn!
No,
A
but
podcast cut so short.
I feel like yeah, China cuts itself short in their transfer of culture. Um, I think especially now, like there's so much in China now in modern day that nobody even knows about. And I think there's a lot that's just locked within it. That's just not, that transfer of knowledge isn't just shown out to the world. Say like compared to Korea and Japan, where their culture is like transferred towards all of Western, media. But that's what
Yeah.
I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it
Okay.
seems like China was just doing its own thing while Europeans was just doing like going for an adventure,
It was chilling,
you know.
but yeah, I mean, China kept like splitting and coming back together like 5 million times, but you know,
Yeah, I mean they just had their own beef internally.
yeah,
Like they
they
just
was
had no time for
they were
adventure time.
they were struggling with themselves, man.
Yeah.
They needed some internal
They're the
reflection.
biggest.
They're their own biggest enemy, for real, for real, for real. Anyway, let's go here. Thank you, so much, guys, for listening to our first episode. I hope it was good. I hope it was quirky. I hope it was smexy. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't. We're gonna look at this post. We're gonna look at this post production, and we're like, damn, we were cooked. This was ass. Who knows?
That was some
This is
cringe
like,
kids.
so, just like, what the fuck? They comparing shit to LeBron James. This is class.
What does he mean by the silk that's not real? What's going on here? Anyway, thank you very much,
Anyway, yeah.
guys, and we'll see you
Well,
next
see
time.
you on the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.